At the age of 87, Donald Sutherland was quietly dying in 2022. However, he continued to drive a vehicle that the majority of people had never heard of. It was not ostentatious. It was nothing new. He had 5 of these Mercedes 450 Seal 6.9s hidden all around the world. Why would 5 cars be necessary for a dying man? The 1960s is when the solution first appeared. A wrecked Ferrari, and a decision that cost him more than just cash. Later, according to his son, his father lived a life filled with regret. His last act of rebellion was what he did at the age of 87, and that car was a part of it. On July 17, 1935, Donald McNichols Sutherland was born in St. in the midst of the Great Depression, John, New Brunswick. Frederick, his father, did not work at a regular job. He was in charge of the town's transit, gas, and electricity services, which subtly put the family in a respectable middle-class position. Dorothy, his mother, was a math teacher. Additionally, Donald's grandfather was a Scottish church pastor at one point. The borders of his boyhood were sculpted by that combination of order, numbers, and old-world religion. The family initially resided in a peaceful home, close to the Kennebec River. Life seemed little and slow for a while, and Donald's first school was a modest one-room structure. However, everything changed when he turned 6. They returned to the city after his father got a significant position as vice president of the New Brunswick Power Company, giving them a significant boost in their status. A tempest of illness overtook Donald's body when he was barely 14 years old. It was more than polio. It was a confluence of hepatitis, spinal meningitis, pneumonia, scarlet fever, and rheumatic fever. He truly passed out from meningitis for a brief moment before being revived. The diseases left their marks. Forever, one leg was shorter than the other. His early years weren't merely a series of hospital stints. It was a struggle for life. He didn't simply leave with a needle phobia. He returned hungry to get away into something greater than himself. He turned to storytelling as a result. His family had relocated to Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, by the time he was 12. School changed completely. He was well known and somewhat feared at Bridgewater High for his accurate portrayals of politicians, radio shows, and teachers. He was deconstructing when he took the stage, not only acting. While still in high school, he transformed The Mikado into a full-fledged operetta, and even directed his own shows. There was no pleasure in the performances. They served as his means of observing, comprehending, and even making fun of people, in ways that showed something genuine. Sometimes it was uncomfortable for the people being imitated. He accepted his first job at a local radio station, at the age of 14, still struggling with residual polio paralysis. He was reading obituaries, conducting interviews, and announcing sports in addition to reading the news. He attended school full-time and worked 25 hours a week for 35 cents an hour. In addition, he paid $12 per week to bring milk to 47 homes every morning. For the same 25 cents an hour, they excavated construction ditches in Halifax throughout the summer and carried dirt by hand. It was a challenging task. He learned a clear lesson from the terrible salary. His future did not lie in physical labor. Acting no longer felt like an escape after coming to that awareness. It was a matter of survival. He developed a fascination with movies. British war films were available for 15 cents at the Capitol Theatre, and Donald would keep going back to see the same movies, particularly those starring Humphrey Bogart. He absorbed complete screenplays, committed sequences to memory, and began accurately sketching actors' faces. He made more money from the sketches than he did from his radio job, selling them for 50 cents each. Even a local newspaper featured one of his Bogart illustrations. He wasn't only viewing films. He was examining them, recognizing something in the personas he may adopt. He enrolled at the University of Toronto in 1953 and chose engineering as his major. His father believed it would provide security, not because he loved it. He then went to try out for a play as a dare. He had never seen one before. He got the role. Everything changed in that one moment. Shakespeare's The Tempest and a number of touring shows with the Straw Hat actors were among the theater parts he balanced with engineering classes after that. He had degrees in acting and engineering by the time he graduated. He decided to take the chance of acting instead of accepting the engineering job offers and their steady $15 incomes. He borrowed $250, a huge amount at the time, from his mother in 1957, and set out for London to attend Lambda. The funds were short-lived. He left school and accepted a menial position in a Scottish repertory theatre, where he shared a home with several failing performers. and lived off of bread, tea, and now and then fish and chips. During that time, he shed 30 pounds and performed in little towns throughout Scotland, often not even packing the front row, as Hercules in a little-known drama called The Rape of the Belt. 1962 was one of the worst years. He was certain he had the part when he tried out for a movie. He was adored by the producer, writer, and director. However, they informed him the following morning that he didn't appear to have ever shared a residence with anyone. For the audition, he had spent the last $10 on shoes. It had been 3 days since he had a healthy lunch. He was almost broken by the rejection. With his tall, angular build and peculiar personality, he questioned whether he would ever fit in at Hollywood. He continued. In 1963, he received his first movie credit 10 times over, but it was uncredited and only paid $25. In 1964, he played 3 parts in Castle of the Living Dead, including one in drag. Despite its chaos, lack of funding, and general obscurity, the film was noteworthy. In 1965, he co-starred with Sidney Poitier and Richard Whitmark in The Bedford Incident, a somber Cold War thriller. His presence was genuinely important to the plot for the first time. Then lightning struck in 1967. He had only one line and a very small role in The Dirty Dozen. However, Sutherland improvised, making the entire team laugh, and attracted the attention of producer Ingo Premier when another actor declined to perform a humorous sequence. Director Robert Aldrich pointed to Sutherland and said, "You with the big ears, you do it." His part in MASH was a direct result of the incident. With a gross of over $81 million and the top prize at Cannes, that movie was a huge hit. The military, however, detested it behind the scenes. Because of its anti-war stance, the movie was prohibited from showing in military-based theaters. Sutherland also had a falling out with filmmaker Robert Altman, who attempted to fire him but was thwarted by the producer. On set, Sutherland never felt like he belonged. He didn't join the crew for a celebration. He was captivating on TV, but he didn't get the internal gags. Sutherland gained notoriety for his drastic physical changes during his career. For Fellini's Casanova, he shaved his head. For other parts, he grew it out. For horror movies, he bleached it. He put on weight. He altered his gait. He changed his voice. He changed his stride. Vanity was not his goal. He was searching for performance truth. His hair started acting on its own, changing with each movie and contributing to the plot. He fell in love, too. He met Shirley Douglas, the future Prime Minister Tommy Douglas's daughter, at Victoria College. They started dating in 1956 and finally got married. They established a radical theatrical group, practiced until dawn, and attracted attention from the government with their controversial anti-war plays. He was never merely an actor. It was a form of protest, a means of speaking out and questioning established structures. He continued to move on even after setbacks, such as the disastrous 1970 comedy Start the Revolution, Without Me. Critics were disappointed by the film's box office performance amid a contentious political period, but it didn't stop him. Now he was moving. In the 1970s, Donald Sutherland's career was about more than just being famous. It was about heartbreak, controversy, risk, fire, and rebellion all intertwined. Clute was the first in 1971. Filming with Jane Fonda at the Chelsea Hotel ignited an intense relationship even though he was already married. Later, in the moonlight, he recalled resting on a bed and seeing her emerge nude from the restroom. It was more than a scene. It lasted for 18 months. Both of them were already married. After they attended the 1972 Academy Awards together and went public after she won her Oscar, everything fell apart in Tokyo. It shattered his heart, he said. However, their political connection remained strong even as their affection did. They were chosen to represent America's anti-war celebrity movement in the same year. They were placed under monitoring by the FBI in 1973's Don't Look Now. A love scene that he and Julie Christie taped was so unvarnished that it caused a censorship controversy. Director Nicholas Rowe was informed by American censors that they were unable to depict the rise and fall between thighs. Therefore, Rowe only removed 9 frames and used dressing scenes and fragmented cuts to edit the other frames. Rumors, however, persisted. Peter Bart of Variety said years later that he witnessed Sutherland and Christie having genuine sex on the scene. Christie's boyfriend, Warren Beatty, came into London in a rage and attempted to have the scene edited himself, which didn't help. In The Day of the Locust 1975, Sutherland portrayed Homer Simpson, not the animated character, as a lonely man who goes insane and kills a child during a riot. Lifted by the throng like a shattered saint, he was drenched in blood. People interpreted it incorrectly, believing him to be a fascist icon. Critics were unsure on how to interpret it. According to Ian Baruma, the performance was simply too somber for a nation commemorating its bicentennial at the time, but it struck a deeper chord years later, when people eventually looked past the surface. Bertolucci's 5-hour epic, 1900, followed in 1976. Sutherland portrayed a yaya, a fascist who abuses children, murders animals on television, including a cat, and gives a performance that reviewers deemed disgusting and overbearing. He spoke in regional Italian dialects, and gained weight for the part. Budgetary disputes almost caused the movie to fail. Investors were alarmed by its extreme left-wing views, and because of its graphic sex scenes, people departed. Bertolucci was unconcerned. He continued to roll. The eagle nearly killed Sutherland the same year. The blast went off incorrectly during an explosion scenario. He had burns on his eyebrows. Despite being shaken, he continued, he was attempting to capture Churchill while posing as an IRA assassin. The movie made reference to risky politics. A sentence on Irish freedom that Sutherland improvised was later censored. The British censors weren't satisfied, so he had to redub lines. His private life was falling apart. Despite having twins, Kiefer and Rachel, born in 1966, his marriage to Shirley Douglas ended in 1970. The last straw was the Jane Fonda scandal. In 1977, Shirley returned to Canada with the children. He had dated actress Brenda Vaccaro for 6 years prior to Shirley. His romantic life was just as tumultuous as his roles. Then came Free the Army, an FTA program that soldiers joked meant F the Army. Sutherland and Fonda performed anti-war against military installations. He read from Johnny, got his gun in coffee shops close to army bases, advising soldiers to defy orders. Instead of only observing, the FBI accused him of having communist sympathies. The FTA documentary was taken out of theaters by Nixon's administration. Sutherland received death threats and momentarily moved to Canada for protection because things got so nasty. His health almost failed him in the midst of all of this. In the early 1970s, he had spinal meningitis while filming a project. It was potentially fatal. It took a while to recover. There is a substantial chance of long-term harm. It made him reconsider everything, whether his body could handle the level of focus he gave to his profession, what roles to accept, and how many chances were worth taking. In 1972, he got married again, this time to Francine Rhett. The timeline was strange, because they had met in 1974 on the set of Alien Thunder. Individuals muttered. Rogue, Ross, and Angus were the names of their 3 boys. Rumors of Sutherland abusing cocaine and drinking excessively started to circulate around the time of The Locust. His conduct on set changed, and everybody noticed it. Arguments with directors and a lack of discipline. Francine stayed in Hollywood during the cocaine era of the 1970s. Later, he attributed his sense of groundedness to her intelligence and sense of humor. Threats were rekindled in 1972, when the FTA movie reappeared. In the documentary, soldiers voiced their opposition to the conflict. Genuine voices, genuine footage, and real rage. Nixon detested it. It was deemed harmful by the government. Fonda and Sutherland were forced to employ private security. The FBI stepped up its monitoring. One of the few protest movies that really made people take notice was this one, Ordinary. People followed in 1980. His most subdued performance was that of a heartbroken father. Furthermore, he was not even nominated by the Academy. The movie took home the Best Picture award. At age 20, Timothy Hutton took home the Best Supporting Actor award. Sutherland's performance, however, was disregarded despite its sophisticated method. He had given it his all, even digging through his early trauma from his hospital stays for rheumatic disease and polio. Once he was bedridden for a whole school year. The pain was evident. The same shadows hung over his subsequent roles. His 10-minute monologue as Mr. X in JFK, 1991, became one of the most referenced parts of the movie. The movie was based on Andre Chikatilo's real-life nightmare, in which he killed 52 people over a 12-year period. Sutherland did not simply appear. He read KGB documents, learnt Russian words, and lost weight. His character battled a system as well as a murderer. Chikatilo was an untouchable Communist Party member in Soviet Russia. Because the state was more concerned with appearance than with the facts, the case stagnated. Sutherland didn't make a big production out of his performance. The burn was gradual. The silent annoyance of a man who was concerned in a world that wasn't. He won a Golden Globe and an Emmy for that role. He wasn't acting heroically. In a society that penalized decency, he was portraying someone attempting to be decent. Now fast forward to the 2003 Italian Job. Sutherland portrayed the mentor, John Bridger. He passes away early in the movie. However, that scenario wasn't merely in the script. He suggested shooting it first. He had a motive. He had been conscious of mortality ever since a tumor scare in the 1970s. And he dealt with it by documenting that moment. The identical locations where the original Italian Job was envisioned were used for the filming in Venice. This was no accident. Sutherland aimed to establish a connection between the past and present through memory as well as storyline. His death scene's handheld camera lacked aesthetic appeal. It was intimate. The treachery became personal as a result. His persona did more than simply carry the torch. He helped you understand what it's like to leave unresolved matters behind. In 2011, the mechanic followed. His age was 76. He portrayed wheelchair-bound veteran assassin Harry McKenna. Sutherland, however, was not merely sitting motionless. He did a lot of his own stunts, avoiding commotion and maneuvering through confined locations. He was not broken but brittle. His character moves the wheelchair with a passion that seemed too real in one instance. It was for that reason. To get it properly, he researched injured veterans. He was behaving out of actual, genuine physical agony. But he continued. Sutherland was right there in that vehicle, chase sequence through New Orleans. It was more than just activity. It was meant to demonstrate that relevance was not diminished by age, that he could still rival men half his age in terms of adrenaline, at the age of 76. According to director Simon West, Sutherland's insistence on realism altered their approach to the whole movie. The first marriage of Donald Sutherland didn't just terminate. The weight of rejection, hunger, and chilly London evenings caused it to crumble. In 1959, while still struggling to make ends meet, as a drama student at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, he married Lois Hardwick. Despite being a teacher, she was unable to keep the lights on. He wasn't only upset when everything came apart after 7 long years. He slept on friends' couches, since he was broke, and had to count coins to purchase food. He got to the point where, in 1966, he had to call a man he hardly knew, Christopher Plummer, to borrow $1,500 so he could fly to America and try his luck in Hollywood. It was a fortune. The guilt persisted longer than the loan, and it took him 2 years to repay it. Later, he said he was shocked that he had called. He carried that early hurt and that emptiness of pride into all subsequent relationships, always present and constantly tugging at the edges of his existence. Next up was Shirley Douglas. His career was just beginning to take off when he married her in 1966. She was a fervent activist and the daughter of a politician. They also had twins, Kaffir and Rachel, at the end of that year. Smoke swiftly replaced the fire between them. Donald had consumed a lot of alcohol. His absence became her prison, but the movie sets became his haven. The twins were only toddlers when they separated in 1970. Sutherland abruptly became a part-time parent once Shirley brought them to Canada. It was summer weeks and Christmas visits. Years later, Kiefer revealed that he didn't really know his father until he was a teenager. And it was evident. The damage was subtle yet persistent. Decades of attempting to fix something that never truly formed in the first place, followed years of missed birthdays and empty seats. He wed Francine Rhett in 1972. 52 years passed before his death this time. Together, they have 3 sons, Angus Redford, Rossif, and Roe. His children's birth certificates included odes to directors he admired, akin to a thank you note. However, there were flaws in even this enduring love. Sutherland was never present. In addition to making him famous in 1970, Mrs. H also established the tone for the remainder of his life. Prioritize work over family. He lost out on significant events that are impossible to relive. In 2005, he acknowledged it himself, claiming that he was stupid and that everything was his fault. He was obsessed, not mean. He allowed the industry to have him. Later, Kaffir repeated the trend, stating that their only genuine time was around the holidays. It wasn't all misery despite having 5 children, 3 marriages, 1 constant, and distance. He was illuminated by his obsessions. Among them were automobiles, more especially the Mercedes-Benz 450 SEAL 6.9. For convenience, he purchased 5 of the same model instead of just one. He wanted to know that a trustworthy vehicle would be waiting for him wherever he was. There were the Ferraris after that. When he purchased a scarlet 1968 Ferrari 275 GTB4 in Bologna in the 1960s, it all began. It broke down as he was traveling through Yugoslavia after only 2 days. To have it fixed, he had to mail it to the United States. However, even the Ferrari was unable to withstand his separation from Shirley. It was his idea, not hers. Being 6, he understood that a 2-seater would not be sufficient for him to transport his twins on infrequent visits. Thus, another bit of independence departed with the Ferrari. The body began to disintegrate as he grew older. He had broken shoulders from decades of death scenes, where he refused to use his hands to break a fall, arthritis, and hearing loss. Actors, he claimed, crash repeatedly on camera rather than simply dying. And it hurt. Medical marijuana was beneficial. It was effective, but he never yelled about it. His body pleaded with him to stop, but he continued to act into his 80s. He claimed that for an actor, retirement meant death. He meant it too. He continued. Press tours, lengthy flights, Hunger Games, and memorizing lines while one ear is working and joints are screaming. He didn't stop though, nor did his political fervor fade. The authorities kept a close eye on him in the 1970s. His anti-war stance put him on the NSA's radar between 1971 and 1973. Together with Jane Fonda, he co-founded a group that protested the Vietnam War by touring military installations. It was dubbed Free the Army. It was deemed a threat by the military. It was deemed required by Sutherland. He was classified as a security risk by the FBI. It was a badge he wore. He eventually received an honorary Oscar from the Academy in 2017, at the age of 82. For every movie, not just one. For what he did in private and for everything he went through in order to continue. He acknowledged the personas he portrayed in his speech, as though they were actual individuals who helped him get through life. He made a joke about how he didn't deserve the prize or arthritis, but he did everything he could. He did more than just act with his voice. He contributed his gravitas to serious causes and narrated documentaries. He was deeply affected by the Daruur slaughter. In 2007, he provided his voice to Daruur. He wasn't merely there to record. He had faith in it. By that time, hundreds of thousands had been slain, and nearly 2.5 million people had been uprooted by the genocide. He ensured that everyone was aware. He was firm but not overt about it. He treated Jennifer Lawrence like family during the Hunger Games years, mentoring her and sending her 50 movies to watch. It stayed with her forever. He did it even though he didn't have to, because he offered everything he had to those in need when he wasn't preoccupied with his job. And it was more than simply acting when he played President Snow. There was a message. He wanted the next generation to understand the ease with which power can be abused. He even appeared in animated films, voiceovers, documentaries, and The Simpsons. His body grew old, but his voice never did. It continued to be strong. It was still substantial. He used it all the way through. He was already dying by 2020, when he was working with Nicole Kidman on The Undoing. COPD and prostate cancer from decades of 4 packs a day of smoking. Despite his constant need for oxygen, he continued to work, memorize lines, and perform, earning a Critics' Choice Award. His spirit was unyielding, but his body was shutting down. Judge Isaac Parker in Lawman. Bass Reeves was his final role in 2023. Only 7 months before his death, it was broadcast. He was 88. He filmed all 8 episodes in Texas, while hauling about an oxygen tank most people never saw. But the flames never went out. He finished the role. He gave it everything. He died on June 20, 2024 in Miami, just a few months before his memoir, Made Up But Still True, was set to come out. His kid, Kiefer, stated it best. He regarded his father one of the most important actors in film history, and the world agreed. Donald Sutherland made over 200 films. He worked non-stop for 60 years, sometimes 6 movies in a single year. He never looked like the traditional star, but maybe that's why we never forgot him. He was odd and clever. He never garnered a competitive Oscar nomination, but he didn't need it. His name is already ingrained in movie history.